what I mean by modern web-based GIS. So here's a map of some data out in the field, collected litter data. So it's represented by these little gold dots. If I'm in ArcGIS Online, which I am right now, and I go over to styles, let's say I want further information about this. Some of you know this, but I'm just going to give a demonstration, especially for those of you that with your teaching hats on, how would I teach this? And secondly, if you're new to all this, just kind of marvel at, wow, I didn't realize that you could do this stuff within 60 seconds. I'm going to add a field to the data. So first of all, I'm going to go over to my litter map. I'm going to add this. How about let's look at the paper litter that I observed out here in the field. Okay, so now we've got what's called a graduated symbol map of just the paper that was surveyed at these locations. So right here, you can see of all of the pieces of litter that was collected there or observed, 9 were paper. But 2 blocks to the west, there were only, and this is pulling up the attribute table, the I part of GIS, there were only 5 pieces of litter. Interesting. Well, what if we went ahead and added all of the types of litter found at those locations? Well, that's too much to make a graduated symbol or a graduated in this case, a point symbol map. So it's giving us 2 things. Now it's giving us a predominance map. Okay, and I'm going to bump up with style options. I'm just going to go ahead and bump up the size so those of you that are in the back of an auditorium or something like that can actually see this, or you've got a small device in your hands trying to manipulate this webinar. So now I bumped up the size a little bit. Notice that we've got 2 things right here. We've got the color representing the type of litter that was predominant at that location. And secondly, we've got the strength of predominance, which is the darkness of the color. So we've got 2 pieces of information. So within about 30 seconds now, we've got some insights that we didn't have earlier. And I want you to put your other hat on now, thinking that, okay, Joseph, you're mapping litter, but this could be noise. It could be tree species. It could be water quality. It could be historical homes, skateboard parks in my community. It could be anything. Right? It could be anything that we're mapping. We're mapping it inside ArcGIS Online. We're changing the symbology or the style. Let's go one more level down. Let's say, okay, we're done with that now. And I'm going to go to charts and size. Charts and size. Now I've got a pie chart for each one of these. Okay, interesting. Does that give us additional insights? No, in cartography and mapping, there's a lot of guidelines. There's not that many rules. So this helps you understand something in a deeper, richer way, which is the goal, right? More about that in a moment. Then by all means, use it. Be cautious and thoughtful about the methods that you're using. There are certain guidelines, and there's Ken Field, our colleague Ken Field, has written a wonderful cartography book from Esri Press, and there's map views from Aileen Buckley and others. So there's wonderful cartography books out there that you can get further guidance on. But if it helps you understand something in a deeper, richer way, there's no law against, I can't use a pie chart here. Of course you can. So now I can see that, okay, the wedges indicate the type of litter. And now let's go one level down and say, I like those pies, but I also want, what about these ring charts? So I'm just going to slide that bar from pie to donut. It's making me hungry. Okay, sliding it from pie to donut. Now I see that I've got a ring chart. Actually, I like the ring charts a little bit better than the pies. I really see now at 6th and Market, I see that big ring of red, and that indicates the paper that I was looking at before. And then 1 block to the north, I see the plastic is almost half of the total amount of litter there. So I've got the number of pieces of litter there. I've also got the type of litter, and I also have the distribution. So I really have 3 things. I'm getting some further insights that I didn't have before. Now, I promised I'd come back to this a moment ago. Oftentimes, my colleagues and I get people, well-intentioned people that make maps of their data, and they say, here's my URL for my web map. And that's great, we'll say. And why do we say and? Because the end goal is not to make a map. Now you're going to be posting to social media, hey, Joseph Kursky from Esri said the end goal is not to make well, it never is to make a map. The map is a means to understanding something in a deeper, richer way, right? And then I'm going to nudge you one more level further to take action. So here it's litter. Okay, so what? What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? Right? We have a finite planet here. There's no planet B, right? In the case of litter or lots of other things we could talk about, what can we do about it? Some of you know this is downtown San Diego. This is the location for where the Esri conference is. And it's a very touristy area. Is this litter mostly from tourists? Is it from locals? Hopefully you're asking questions. What time did Joseph collect the data? What time of day? What day of the week? Was it after a baseball game at this Petco Park? Was it before the baseball game? Did that have anything to do with it? Should we need recycling bins? Do we need a community awareness campaign? What can we do about the litter situation? Okay, interesting. So that's just an example of, hey, I've got a spreadsheet of data, right? The spreadsheet of data looks like this. It has a location, it's got a latitude, longitude, it's got the different numbers of pieces of litter that were observed at those locations. Interesting. So once you've got something that's geospatial, you can map it and then analyze it. And as I'm nudging you, take action about it. So that's another demonstration of modern web-based GIS. Some of you may know that in the past, not too many years ago, doing this took hours. It took hours to get all the data in the same projection, in the same coordinate space, and then to do this kind of mapping. Took hours. And now with a couple of clicks, we've got some further insights. So again, don't let the ease of doing GIS preclude you from making the thoughtful, wise decisions that you need to make as you go forward with this. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention here is that maps are not just reference documents. Maps are analytical tools for solving problems, looking at the spatial patterns, the relationships, the trends, and making smarter decisions. Also, get you to think about this. Map is a verb too. It's not just a noun, right? It's a verb. It's an active thing. And that's why many of us that are in GIS education love teaching with GIS, because it encourages students to think critically, spatially, holistically about our world. That the ecosphere is connected to the biosphere, is connected to the anthroposphere, is connected to the hydrosphere, et cetera. Now, this kind of traditional ways of thinking about the Earth as a connected set of spheres is very well grounded in the indigenous communities around the world. I do work with tribal colleges and native schools, and I always tell them, you actually have an advantage over the general population because you're already thinking about the world as a connected set of systems and the cycles of the hydrologic cycle, the water cycle, and then the carbon cycle, et cetera. Okay, so thinking about the world as an interconnected set of systems, I would just encourage you students out there, focus on something you're passionate about. It could be one or two things: soils, hazards, population change, et cetera, health. Focus on that, get some deep expertise, but don't lose sight of the holistic geographic perspective that we need, where if you alter a variable over here, it's going to alter a variable over there on that in that part of society or that part of the environment. That's exactly what we need. Now, I've got a series of videos on my Our Earth channel in this playlist. I'm going to pop that up right now. It's called GIS Helps. And I'm going to look at this playlist here. See on the left side here, I've got this GIS Helps playlist. Helps you get a job. It provides double benefits, etc. All these things that I've got in here. And this one here, I'm going to skip down a little bit. It helps you solve problems and provides double benefits. This one right here is probably the only video on the planet that combines GIS and the Osmonds. Some of you are like, Joseph, who are the Osmonds? But I refer to the Osmonds. It's probably the only video that has the Osmonds and GIS combined, but it's double benefits. So all of these things are what GIS helps us do, and I highly encourage you to take a look at that. And I'm going to just leave it at that. I also want to encourage you folks, if you've got your microphone on, I've got this recording, so I would highly advise you to turn it off. Yeah, but feel free to chat in the chat box. I'd love to hear your where you are, where you're located. Some people have responded to the quiz. Let's see here. My quiz, if you scroll up in the chat box, name the state capital city in the lower 48 U.S. states that is the farthest from the geographic center of that state. That's a spatial thinking question. So think about that and also take a look at these GIS Helps videos. I hope they're helpful. Now, how can you learn more about GIS? I know some of you are just saying, hey, Joseph, this sounds really interesting. Some of you are like, I've been using GIS for a while, but hopefully there's some things new in this webinar that are helping you move forward as well. But we have I have a variety of videos and other resources in this section of, again, this is a story map. It's publicly available. And so you can actually look at this story map later. I also want to encourage you, if you're using geospatial technology to publicize your research, you could use a story map. Right now, many of us that are on this call publish in journals. We have chapters in books. Those are still viable ways of getting the word out about your research. But also think about story maps and other web mapping applications, dashboards, instant apps, and others, where you can share this with your community and with the whole world. This particular story map is actually shared with the entire planet. Now they have to know the URL, they have to know how to search for it. Here's a little techie tip. Here's a little techie tip. If you went to ArcGIS Online, okay, I'm just going to go to arcgis.com, and if you can search, and there's some, just like a Google search, you can, if you know a few keywords, you can actually search for content. So in this case, if I look up live webcast, and I know my owner name, which is my login name for ArcGIS Online, which is JJ Kursky, I can do a search. And folks, if you don't mind muting your microphone, otherwise I'm going to have to be the mean guy and mute everybody. But the point is, if you look at if you do live webcast owner JJ Kursky, you will find my 2021 live webcast, but more importantly, today. And that is the story map for today. So if you lose track of where in the world is that live webcast, you can search for it right here. You can also do a general search on my name and Google or any other search engine and find it as well. So anyway, just a couple of techie tips that might be handy if you're searching for a map or an app and you know it's out there and you know at least some of the keywords in the title. You go to ArcGIS Online and you search in there, especially if you know the person's login name when they're posting content. But even if not, you should be able to find it there. Okay, so that's a little techie tip there. Now, my favorite Esri Press books of this year are really twofold this year. Mapping the Deep, which is from Dr. Dawn Wright, our chief oceanographer, chief scientist here at Esri. She's a very good friend of the education team, and we love having Dawn Wright as part of Esri. So she's got a book. It's actually a very poignant personal story, including in that book, how she journeyed into being the chief scientist at Esri, how she got into geospatial technology and oceanography. It's very, very well done. And also why it all matters, why studying the oceans actually matters and how we can do that more effectively with geospatial technology. And then the other book that I have mentioned there is The Power of Where. The Power of Where. Now, Jack Dangermond, our Esri CEO and president, wrote that book. And that book is all about, as you can see here, the power of where. Okay. Now, I also want to encourage, especially you instructors and those of you that are learning GIS, which covers probably most people on this webinar, take a look at thepowerofwhere.com. Thepowerofwhere.com. That is actually not just a website for the book, but it is a great resource for you to learn more about geospatial technology. I also want to encourage you instructors, if you're teaching intro or even intermediate GIS or related topics, if you're teaching economics, oceans, physical geography, cultural geography, sociology, and some other topics, you can actually use this book because every single thing in here, okay, every single thing in here is, hey folks, do you mind muting yourself? Much appreciated. Every single thing in here is an interactive web map, okay? 2D and 3D. So it's very engaging and you can use it as an instructional piece. So I would highly encourage you to use this book for teaching, but also for learning more about geospatial technology. Now, I also want to mention that one of my favorite ways to learn more about geospatial technology is the Esri MOOCs. I was on the planning team. I was very honored to be on the planning team for many years that started these MOOCs, and now smarter people than me have taken that and run with it. And we've got about 6 or 7 Esri massive open online courses, making web apps, understanding imagery, how to use cartography more effectively, et cetera. So we've got MOOCs that actually are sort of like a university course in that they start at certain times of the year. We've got other Esri training that you can take anytime, but these you actually have to start because at certain times of the year, because the idea is to go through with a cohort and to learn with your colleagues, with your peers. Okay, so I highly recommend those MOOCs. They're about 6 weeks long. They're all free. They're very rigorous. They're fun. They're engaging, and you'll learn some things. I always learn things when I take those MOOCs, so I highly encourage those. We also have a large variety of lessons and other things that you can see here in this section of the story map. Time doesn't permit me to actually go through those right now. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is to have you think about, especially because I know some of you are just getting into the field of geography, environmental studies, geospatial technology, and you wonder, hey, what does a geographer that's been a geographer his whole career think about? Right now, one of the things I'm thinking about actually is I'm just going to be in the spirit of true confessions here, and I'm going to show you what I'm working on today. This is what I'm working on right now. It's not a huge project, but you can see these straight line segments. I'm thinking about the straightest roads and turning that into a lesson. I've got four identified right here, right now. There's a very long straight road in North Dakota. That's right here. And there's a north-south road in Iowa that's pretty straight. And you can see this stretch of I-80 that I remember as a kid driving between Wisconsin and Colorado, thinking that's a straight road. We haven't changed our trajectory going due east or due west, whichever direction we were traveling on that stretch of I-80 between Lincoln and Grand Island for an hour. And indeed, that is one of the straightest interstate segments. There's also a diagonal highway that is north of where I'm going to tomorrow, north of Texas Tech University in Lubbock, that is diagonal from Texas into Oklahoma Panhandle into Kansas. It's diagonal, but it is a straight shot. So I'm thinking about turning that into a lesson to have the students think about why are these roads so straight, to get them thinking about the public land survey system in our country. And most of the U.S. is surveyed on section townships and ranges, as many of you know. So there's a survey aspect and also thinking about landforms. You can't really have a straight road in the Sierra Nevada or in the Appalachians or in the Alps, right? And also there's a history component with roads in many countries that were settled centuries and centuries ago where you didn't have a surveyed line that was turned into a road. So getting them to think about history, landforms, public land survey system, a little bit of GIS. I'm going to use the measurement tools. I'm going to measure angles. How straight is that road really? Was there a little deviation in that? So straight roads is what I'm thinking about right now. It's kind of a fun lesson that I'm going to turn in. One of the main focus areas that I engage in is getting students to think spatially. And I oftentimes want to have them start with something that's interesting so they'll be engaged. Okay. So that's kind of an interesting topic, I think. So that's one of the things that I'm working on right now that I thought I'd share with you. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is the results of that quiz that I posed a moment ago. And I'm going to just check the chat box to see if anybody, and Steve's got it, of course. Steve from Wyoming. Steve might have been disqualified. No, he's from Wyoming, but he's a spatial thinker, and he's one of my favorite people in all of geospatial technology. And that is Cheyenne, Wyoming. Yes. The center of Wyoming, if you balanced it on a pencil, the shape of Wyoming is actually due west of Casper on US 26. And Cheyenne's way down in the southeast corner of the state. So it's fascinating to think about, why was it Cheyenne? There's, again, some very historical, significant reasons with the railroad, the Oregon Trail, and other things that's why it's in Cheyenne. You'd think it would be in Casper, but there's reasons why it's not in Casper. That would have been more toward the geographic center. And that's a fascinating one. Notice that I excluded Juneau, Alaska, which is actually would be number one if I included all the 50 states, right? Excellent. Awesome. Yeah, Debbie, the quiz is up in the chat box there. All right, I've got others to follow, so don't feel like you're left out. Another thing I'm thinking about right now is that, I always encourage people every year to read in these GIS Day webcasts. And one of the books that I read this year is about Isaac Newton. Now, Isaac Newton, think about the fascinating discoveries with light, with gravity, etc. He actually was born in Grantham in England. He went to Cambridge, and then he went to London. He didn't even make it to the coast. He went close to the coast, but didn't actually make it to the coast despite all of his theories and observations about tides. So he traveled basically 120 miles his whole career. And then there are other people like Ibn Battuta and Marco Polo and other people that I have written about and talk about in this Thinking Spatially podcast every month, which is another resource you might want to think about joining us at just tapping into that. I publish it on the first of the month, but you can tap in anytime. But Dawn Wright, I mentioned our chief scientist. She went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench a couple summers ago. She's been all over the world. And Marco Polo, Al Biruni, and others that have traveled extensively, and they're great spatial thinkers. And there are others like Newton that traveled very little, but they're also thinking spatially, and they're great thinkers. So it's interesting to kind of juxtapose those two things. All right,